Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellen.
This is Casen.
And for one final time in the year of 2023, we are coming to you. We're recording on a Wednesday afternoon. This is like the first time ever, Casen, that we've recorded during like this time of the day. I like this. Being able to
Yeah,
just
yeah.
circumstantially, at least with our schedules.
Circumstantially, I have the day off from work, with holidays and stuff, so we were able to get this done. So we're recording right around noon on Wednesday. So if anything breaks after that, we won't be able to cover that one. But
Yes, and I am definitely going to bring up some stuff that broke on the Wednesday morning, but it'll be Thursday by the time you hear this. This is our final show of 2023. And from the very beginning of this year, when we started this whole journey, Casen and I knew, Casen, that we were going to have to do this. You're going to get our top 5 movies of 2023. The order of the show, we're going to finish it up. It's going to be a more pop culture heavy episode today with just things in the news and, of course, talking about the movies. We are going to talk about some NFL at the end of the show. We're going to kind of reverse it on everybody this week. And you're going to get of the weeks right in the center. And like I said, we are going to do our top 5 movies, but we are going to begin with the breaking news out of the MCU this week, which deals directly with when we first covered this show, which, Casen, if you recall, this news initially broke when we did the show when I was visiting you. If you recall, we did the live show,
I
just the two of us.
We remember where we were, and I came up to you in the middle of that event, and we were just like, not good, not good.
This is not good. And of course, we are referring to the Jonathan Majors news. Jonathan Majors is out at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, out at Disney, following his conviction, which this happened the same day his conviction came through for, I want to say, 3rd-degree assault and harassment. And we just kind of want to, that's the news, and we want to discuss it. Go ahead.
It definitely felt like, because people were sort of on Marvel and Feige for a long time for not really commenting on the situation or doing anything. And it definitely felt like they were just waiting for the case to be done. And as soon as he got convicted, they were like, yep, all right.
It was within hours. I mean, it was like, okay, let's get, like, probably had to get the proper filings in place and all that stuff. And it's like, okay.
It's probably, I would imagine, I would imagine it's probably contractually some stuff, because if they gave him some money involved with a so many movie deal, for them to fire him for cause, there probably had to be some sort of conviction. And so I think that's probably what they were waiting for.
Well, and it closes the book on this thing that, again, the initial story broke back in March, and we've been through this whole thing. And of course, all of Loki season 2 has come out, and now he's officially out. Before we get into like what we think the MCU is going to do, I want to go ahead and just say a thing that I think has been lost in the narrative, in the conversation around this whole topic. And I'm just going to be blunt about it. Good riddance. Quite frankly, my thing about it is we had a 23 movie saga of all of these actors and actresses and very talented people in front of the camera and behind the camera in VFX, all this stuff, who made that whole initial Infinity War saga happen. And there were controversies here and there, but no one like this. And Jonathan Majors was in 3 projects, and something like this happened. You know what I mean? Ultimately, so I don't know. It's a tragedy, but also at the same time, it's like, look, like, glad justice is going to be served, and the MCU doesn't need him. We can move on.
I think definitely what people were unaware of was who he is as a person in private. I mean, like, we've seen, like, there was the recording that came out that gave a lot of insight into how he approaches his life, which is just not the person you want to build your entire saga around. I think definitely he was significantly more unknown when they originally signed him.
Right.
So he was a kind of like an unknown quantity. Like, you didn't know what he was going to do or how he was going to act. And he immediately blew up and he was like in the Creed 3 with Michael B. Jordan. And he was in everything, to the point where he was supposed to be in a super long running Army commercial.
That's right.
For Go Army. And
I mean,
yeah,
his like 2021 to early 2023 before March was a run. Like, I really thought we were about to see this guy for the next 10 years, and whether he was in Marvel or not, because he's an objectively very good actor. He's got a lot of range.
yeah.
And
I think he legitimately thought he was like the next Denzel.
Yeah,
I think he because I mean, if you remember, I don't know, did you listen to that recording, the conversation?
I know the recording you're talking about. It was
I
very
it
very egotistical.
he was approaching it as if he was Obama,
Yeah,
or Denzel. Like he was like he I don't remember exactly the quotes, but he was making it sound like he was living up to a purpose that he was like destined for. And I was like, I told friend of the show Matt this. I was like, does he think he's Kang? Like, is he Heath Ledgering right now?
Yeah,
like, does he think he's Kang?
He's playing a little bit too much of the role. I want to quickly give a shout out to other friend of the show, Nate Glusich, who was on our last episode as a guest, who said "He who will not remain" about Jonathan Majors. That was one of the fun. Like, he actually broke the news to me about that and used that exact thing, and I thought that was quite funny. But no, I know what you're referring to, and it's almost like it all went to his head very quickly. He's a pretty young guy. He's 34 years old. I hope he's able to get help and has to serve whatever time, society deems acceptable for his actions. But regardless, I want to shift to the MCU conversation, because obviously I thought, say none of this was going on, right? I still think the MCU would be looking to pivot potentially away from the whole Kang thing, because over the course of this year, it never really took. If you think back, Ant-Man was essentially we liked it, but essentially people didn't take to him as much as it is. And I actually said this to someone. It's actually, spoilers for Ant-Man 3, it's actually a good thing that they didn't go the route of like Kang still being around really at the end of that episode, because now you can almost write Kang off as like he was a one like, there's variants of him, but he was like a one movie villain. You know what I mean?
And then you can kind of basically toss out the credit sequence and be like, maybe we'll like come back to it later with somebody else. I don't. Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's out there. You can kind of do this thing. I mean, they're so against recasting, but aside from the whole recasting thing, I saw people talking about that online. I'm like, guys, audiences are not taking to Kang the Conqueror like I think Marvel anticipated. Like, I think this was going to be a reaction and pivot if none of this stuff off the screen was happening. So, that being said, how would you feel about like a Doctor Doom? Everyone seems to be wanting to say, hey, it's going to be like Doctor Doom and Galactus next. And people are tossing around names like Cillian Murphy to be Doctor Doom, and I'm like, okay, you're onto something. Any thoughts on any of that?
I mean, obviously the most obvious answer would be to go with Doctor Doom, because we know they're bringing back the Fantastic Four, and from a comic standpoint, the Secret Wars storyline was always a Doom storyline anyway.
Yeah,
and so that just made the most sense. And for what it's worth, Doom is essentially like a related villain from Kang. Like I apparently they're like, I guess, supposed to be sort of quantum entangled throughout the multiverse, and they kind of have similar paths with things, and so it's essentially sort of the same thing. And so you can kind of play off of that, where maybe you do something where Kang, a Kang the Conqueror is Doom. I don't know if you if you want to maybe say something like that, where kind of say that's how that's going to go. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
but
there are ways
if you want to go, yeah, I mean, if you want to go with the Cillian Murphy, I think that'd be a great. It's tough because there's a very limited, I would say, supply of actors who could pull off like that role of like just a straight up psychotic human being with like a vaguely Eastern European accent. I mean, because Cillian Murphy isn't like Eastern European like that. But
no, but also at the same time,
I would say one of the Mickelsons maybe would be interesting. I mean, we already have Mads, right?
Let's see. We had Mads. Mads Mikkelsen was the villain in the first Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
So you could put Lars in there, I suppose.
I wouldn't have any problem with just bringing back Mads and being like,
it's
don't
just,
pay attention.
He's Thrawn in one universe and he's Doctor Doom in the other. Like I could see.
that'd be crazy.
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, they're the good villains, but look, they're great at casting. They were able to basically find Jonathan Majors kind of out of nowhere as when he was upcoming. So I think we collectively as a it's almost like, for me, it's almost like this closes the book on that and we can like officially move on. Past this whole thing. In a lot of ways, it's like
the Marvel casting people are gonna have a lot of London Broadway to watch to look for talent.
I can
talent
see
scout on the London theater scene.
I can see that. I can also see the next big movie I think everyone's anticipating, and probably I think the only real Marvel movie, one of maybe two projects, they're going to space it out. Deadpool 3 is going to be a party and a half. I really think that's my number one anticipated movie of next year, because I really think they're going to take that ball and absolutely run with it. And as good as we think it's going to be that much better. Like I think Deadpool 3 is going to be bananas. And so whether they bring in the X-Men or whatever, but I can see them using him to fix like all this stuff, because that's what Deadpool does. He's aware he's a comic book character. I mean, he's self-aware. So I
also
don't think Kang Dynasty is going to happen. I'm not convinced that movie is going to come out in that way.
Yeah. So they definitely, so shortly after the Majors news broke, some of the other outlets were saying Kang Dynasty is still happening. But then after that, they were saying they're now just referring it to Avengers 5.
Yeah.
And so I think what they're saying is there's still going to be another Avengers movie before Secret Wars.
Okay.
So they'll probably change the title, which great, because we need more stuff before we get into Secret Wars, because we are just not ready for that anytime soon. And so we need a ton more information and experiences with these characters to be able to care about them.
We need the X-Men.
The original
Deadpool.
People. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely the next Avengers movie is that. Yeah. So I think we need an Avengers movie like with the Fantastic Four, maybe an X-Men in there. I'm not really sure.
Maybe a few young Avengers in there. Like, the one narrative, and I don't want to beat this to death, but I really, 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 really think they need to establish a lot more young Avengers before they even try that. Because as of now, there's literally only two of them. There's only two that are literally confirmed. There's a bunch of kids in the Avengers, yes, but we need to actually establish them. You can't.
I would assume if they can get, they're on board, they'll go ahead and get Cassie. I would imagine she'd be in that. But I'm still surprised that we haven't got any.
You got America Chavez out there. You got Wanda's kids. You got the Wiccan and Speed. I mean, there's an assembly here. It's just like you need to establish them. You can't just throw them right into an Avengers thing, because let's be real. The young Avengers still need to be able to take on an Avengers level threat. None of them are ready for that yet.
This definitely feels like a Disney Plus show. And I'm surprised that we haven't really gotten anything totally confirming that at all, because we had the Marvel's end post credit scene,
and then there
definitely is setting it up. But you'd think that because of that, they would have announced like this is the project that we're gonna like be having them in. But I mean, because we got Kate Bishop and Miss Marvel in Disney Plus shows, it only feels right that the Young Avengers would be like at least started from a Disney Plus show.
Yeah, and I still just cannot get over the Iman Vellani line of like, all right, who's on this team? You and me. That's it right now. It's like, yep.
Yeah, you and me. Yeah,
that's it. That's the whole team right now. But we'll figure it out. But regardless, I'm looking forward to seeing just kind of what it is. And to be honest with you, Casen, if I was them right now, don't say a word. Get through the new year. Don't say anything. Deadpool 3 is on their way. We're gonna get Echo, I think, which a lot of people are saying the grittiness of that looks very good. And so and hopefully we can get on here.
It's going to speak volumes for what they're going to be willing to do with Daredevil.
Matt Murdock, yes,
and
Kingpin.
It sounds like Charlie Cox is in it a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit.
I can see him being in it as a lawyer, as his regular self, but I don't want to get too sidetracked here. But so anyway, that's the news. That's our thought. You have any more thoughts on that? Because I don't want to hijack it.
No, I mean, yeah, I'll just agree with what you said earlier in the fact that, like, I again, like we talked about at the time, but everybody that was like, oh my, like, what are they going to do without Kang? Like, they're going to be screwed after Loki season 2. Not really. I mean,
they're going to be fine.
It's all wrapped up. Just move on. I think we're fine. We're good. And I mean, if they want to dig it back up in a while with like a different actor, whatever. I don't care.
We'll see. But I really think that I trust this, and with all of the other things that are moving around that we've discussed in the last few months with Marvel and just everything post strike. Now that everyone's back to work, it's kind of like, okay, let's really war room this and figure it out. And I have full confidence in Feige and the squad to do that. So
the only thing I'll add to the MCU conversation is that it was reported, don't know how reliably, but it was reported that Ryan Gosling had a conversation with Kevin Feige in Marvel Studios about some unknown role to be determined.
Interesting,
but very interesting. For that.
See, we got plenty of actors out here. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. You never know who's gonna come in.
I mean, we'll see. I think there's some theories out there that he would be like the villain of Thunderbolts, maybe. So I think what people were thinking.
I could see that. And right there with as vast as the cast is, the big thing with the MCU that I always kind of got blown away with was like, you'd hear a name connect. There's plenty of big names who have done no Marvel projects, right? You'd hear a name, and I would think to myself, would I rather see them as a villain, or or a hero continuing? Because like, for example, Jake Gyllenhaal, when he was cast to be Quentin Beck in the second Spider-Man, I was like that's cool, but I almost would like to see Jake Gyllenhaal as some other character to like keep going in the MCU, right? Instead of being a one-off villain. Christian Bale, same thing. I mean, I thought he was fine as Gore the God Butcher, but it was also like, it would be cool to see these actors in this saga long term. And certain names, when they're attached, it's like, can we please get them in here for longer? So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like a hypothetical situation or sorry, a casting for Gosling that I think I saw thrown around before was the villain of Thunderbolts, and the character would be Sentry, which is sort of like he has like kind of like Superman sort of powers, but I think he's kind of like a dark sort of character. So maybe I don't know if he's like maybe like a Homelander type of personality, but that'd be very funny. It'd be very funny to see him kind of play that.
If you recall, there's still Icarus out there, which
there is also that too.
Who is Superman? So I mean, basically. So I mean, and people are like, yeah, but he flew into the sun at the end. I'm like, the sun would not hurt that guy. Like, it's like, it's fine. So anyway, yeah, is that it? It's movie time.
I believe that was it. So that we can go ahead and go into our rankings.
So we're gonna do 5 to 1. And obviously some of them might overlap, which is fine if they do. The top
this is gonna be fun to compare with our anticipated movies.
Yes, it is. It is going to be which I don't know if I can even remember.
I don't have mine. Yeah, I don't.
I was gonna say, but I know some of these were on here, obviously, for our anticipated movies when we did this at the beginning of the year. And so why don't you start, Casen? Number 5.
Number 5.
2023.
It's gonna have to be Barbie.
Number 5 is Barbie for you. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go with Barbie. I mean, it was a very fun time. It was just it was a enjoyable theater experience, and it was I would say it was a refreshing break from a lot of other um, movies that have been put out recently. So I don't know if I'm just comparing it with the other thing that was out at the time, like with the drastic emotional difference, but it was there were a lot of jokes, a lot of humor, and I just think that Greta Gerwig and the other people involved in the movie wrote a very funny movie for people our age. That had a ton of jokes that landed, I think, mostly with us, and it was cool. It was cool.
That's great to hear. And what I'll say about the whole phenomenon of Barbie this year, let me also say that all of these are going to be movies that I actually saw. I never saw Barbie this year. Do not flame me for it, audience and others. It's I will watch it eventually.
Same. Yeah. I did not put anything that I haven't seen on here yet.
Yeah. So and mine all so happened to be movies that we talked about on this show. But then again, we talk about everything on this show. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So I wanted to comment on Barbie though. That whole period of time was so fun. Like that was a really, really cool phenomenon just to see how it kind of took on a life of its own. And I will watch it, and eventually I'll make my thoughts on it known. I've heard nothing but positive things about it, but I will say this as well. Like it's very cool when a movie like that captivates literally every audience, from like growing up with like the audience that grew up with Barbies from the very beginning to like the little kids currently still playing with them and the Ken dolls and stuff, and everyone in between. A movie like that probably, I don't want to say that. A movie like that doesn't come around all that often. And so I don't know, where it just causes the whole phenomenon of itself and everybody dressing up in ways that really, I don't think we quite expected at the beginning of the year. So yeah, that's one of the comments I wanted to make. Ready for my number 5?
Yes, absolutely.
My number 5 favorite movie of 2023 is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. We reviewed it right here on this show. Again, one of those franchises that weirdly just continues to get better with age. I should also say, I guess, spoiler warning for these movies, but we're not going to re-review them here.
We've talked about, we talked about this one.
So, but we talked about this one. Great all the way around. The additions to the franchise of people like Haley Atwell were just so good. And Cruise as Ethan Hawke just brings it every single time. Single favorite moment of the movie was all that anticipation. Then he just comes in the side of the train. That was it's probably my favorite moment of the film, and worked as its own film, even though it was a part 1. I should say, yeah, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. And with the strike over, I know now we are going to get Part 2, and hopefully not a horribly long amount of time. So
yeah,
that's my number 5.
Great transition, because that is my number 4.
Hey, yes.
So we can say exactly what you said. We talked about it at the time. I mean, it's a great series of movies, and it was a lot of cool additions. I don't even know if I really mentioned it, but it was really cool to see Cary Elwes in this. Yeah, he's a really cool actor that hasn't been in a ton recently, but he played a really cool villain.
And how do you say her name? Palm Clementif. She's in this one, and she's obviously in Guardians. So just starting to see her in a lot more stuff too. So just very good cast, and of course, Ethan, Luther, and Benji always get it done. I don't know how, but they always get it done. What's up?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, absolutely. It was great to have them back again.
So my number 4, I really think my number nights 5 through 1 is really going to surprise some people, because my number 4 is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was a fantastic film, deserves all the praise in the world. I see your face too. Like at 4, I know some people are going to be like that, but there were just 3 movies on this list I enjoyed more this year, and I'll get to why. But Oppenheimer was fantastic. There's nothing more I could say here that I didn't already say in our incredible review of it. Seeing that go opposite with Barbie coming out at the same time was a phenomenon in itself. But I've never seen a movie that really, at the end of the day, is mostly just dialogue. You're hearing about what's going on and everything. I've never been that enthralled and just entertained. I also have never had a theater experience like that where I am in a packed, and I mean packed auditorium, and no one said a word the entire movie. It was like pin drop. It's like everyone recognized from that first opening shot to like when they do the Prometheus line, like how he opens that movie on the explosion. It's like from that shot on, it's like the tone was set and it was like, okay, locked in for 3 hours, which for me didn't even feel like 3 hours. So, yeah, just nothing. I can't say more about Oppenheimer. That's my number 4.
Yeah. So then my number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Awesome.
So, great way to end it. I think it was a really powerful movie. It was, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I want to say it might be. It's at least the second best, and I'm trying to figure out if it's up there with the first one. I'm trying to figure out if it's better than the first one or not. It's real tough, but it's definitely at least I think better than the second one.
The first Guardians is, if I was doing a top, this would be impossible, but the first Guardians is probably in my top 10 favorite movies ever. It is almost a perfect film, and it for all ages. And for them and for James Gunn to deliver just 3 absolute bangers, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with the DCU, because he's the man. The man makes great movies. What can I say? When it says written and directed by James Gunn, sign me up. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm addicted, man. So yeah, cool stuff. My number 3. This is going to be interesting. A movie that you might have forgotten about. Listen, Oppenheimer is a great biopic. There was another biopic this year that I liked a lot. Not a lot more, but I liked it more as a movie, and that is Air, Courting a Legend. That film about how Nike signed Jordan that we talked about in like our 4th ever show, Casen. It was like our 4th or 5th show. With the incredible red and black cover that your wife Morgan made for that. I still love it. Yeah, I wore my Nikes, saw it with my mom. And another film, which is mostly just talking, but they did it in a way that, again, was so entertaining, and they told the story, not really, obviously, from Jordan's perspective, but they chose a very good idea to mask him and make him not the focus. It was all about Nike and all the people involved, and changed the world, literally, So shout out to Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for making that film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, the terrific crew. They always put out real entertaining movies.
Again, similar James Gunn. Sign me up. They make nothing but good films, especially when they're together. That was also the period of time, if you recall, Casen, where you taught me a lot about like their relationship, which was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go back and listen to that if you didn't listen to that episode, because I talk a lot about it, but yeah, they have a lot of background with each other going all the way back to their time in Mass together.
And at the end of the list, we really got to talk about like what our process was in terms of ranking these.
We'll talk about that.
We'll do that. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, so then my number 2.
Number 2.
I would imagine this is going to be in your next 2 picks as well. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Kaboom. There it is. Let's get this out of the way. My number 2, people are going to be surprised by this. My number 2 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. A lot of people are going to, we have the same number 2. We have the same number 2, which makes me really wonder what your number 1 is. But I wanted to rip that Band-Aid off right now just so we can talk about it again. Fantastic movie, does things with animation literally none of us have ever seen before. Has in a way kind of completely changed animated movie processes forever.
Yeah.
I do want to say though, my time since that movie came out, and part of the reason I had put it at number 2 was some of the stuff that's come out about that movie, like animators and how they were, the crunch stories that came out. And not to mention just the process, and then the strike happened. Then it's like, okay, it's also, it ends on a cliffhanger. We're not getting beyond the Spider-Verse for a while, like probably another 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? Which is fine and everything. But if you think back, it's kind of wild that they were like thinking that, like, we were sitting here thinking that the Beyond was going to come out this March. You remember that? That was like,
I think it was supposed to, wasn't it?
well, it was supposed to, but remember, if you recall, multiple actors on the red carpet said that they hadn't done anything as far as voice work was, and then that caused like them a lot of the press. Like, it was on the red carpet, and people were like, "Oh, so are you hyped for like the next one?" And it's like, "Well, I haven't done anything for the next one yet." And it's like, well, wait. And only then did Sony actually have to like say, "Oh yeah, we're delaying Beyond." And it was like, so wait, were you gonna like? It's almost like they didn't want like that news or revelation to hurt the box office of the current movie. I really think that was what happened there, because if you recall, the strikes were going on. But the fact that
because I would imagine
they let that just
I would imagine probably they probably rightfully thought that if people found out that it was going to be delayed for a while, then people were just not going to go see it in theaters and just wait for it to come out and and rent it later before the next one comes out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm looking forward to the next one is when that movie came out. Again, go listen to that episode. This is kind of a harkening back, but you had just seen Across the Spider-Verse, which in itself is kind of a perfect movie in my opinion. Or Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, the first one.
Yeah.
And and then of course we saw Across the Spider-Verse and reviewed it, and I'm excited to just have everybody back in the Beyond, like the, Mulaney, everybody, like everyone, Nick Cage, get everyone in the third one, whenever it's coming out, 2028 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great movie, and I think the cliffhanger it ended on, which annoying that it's going to take so long to get the next one, but it ended on a great cliffhanger that is really, which like that's kind of the good thing though, is that like it ended on a cliffhanger that was so powerful that like we want this now. Like, make this movie.
Well, not only that, like I haven't seen the whole thing a second time, mainly because I just don't feel like I need to. But I will say this: the next time I see it, I almost want to watch the second one and have it roll right into the third one. That's part of my thing. The story's not over yet, and I expect them to end it on a banger. I have no reason to doubt that it's not going to end up being one of the best 3 superhero trilogies ever. And also one other thing, I love how, as a Spider-Man fan, I love how much like it's made Miles almost like the prime Spider-Man now. He'll never be the prime, but you know what I mean. He's as popular as Peter was, and it's just very, very cool to see between this movie series, not to mention Spider-Man 2, the video game, like that Miles in that series as well. So great stuff. But I think people are going to be surprised, with as much as I love Spider-Man, that I put it at number 2.
So, yeah, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, I figured people were going to be that way. So, yeah, go ahead.
All right,
needed to.
So then my number 1 is Oppenheimer.
Okay, there it is. So. Let's get into it. What made you put that at number 1? Pulling that back.
So yeah, I mean, a lot like what you said, was the visuals were terrific. I mean, again, I go back and listen to that episode because we talked a lot about that one. Christopher Nolan, just one of my favorite directors ever. He clearly cared about this movie a lot because of how much work he put into the format and talking about the format. And I think I think he definitely really was proud of this movie and really cared a ton about I mean, at least his job is the visuals, or at least, I mean, the visuals of it, I mean, and the story too, but the color, the color black and white stuff. I mean, it's definitely like a very complex movie. And I mean, I even admitted at the time, I was like, I was a little confused going into it, but I mean, I kind of like that a little bit, I mean, I like movies that sort of challenge you and make you think. I know, I mean, I know a lot of people are saying it's like this and Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, for like the Oscar
Yeah,
buzz and
a
stuff.
movie that I definitely want to see.
Which is interesting because I think Killers of the Flower Moon is like longer than Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
And so
apparently it is. Yeah.
Crazy that two like 3.5 hour movies are leading the way for Best Picture. But I mean, anyway, I was just gonna say the terrific performances. I mean, I can't say enough about Cillian Murphy. I think Emily Blunt got a lot of a bad rap for her portrayal in the movie because I think she did the best she could with what she was given. I think a lot of what she was doing that people kind of knocked her for was the role, though.
I mean, she was. I think I said at the time she was varying degrees of miserable the entire film. She was at no point happy in that movie.
And it felt, I think from like a story standpoint, that felt like what she was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it actually makes it. Well, also look at what he's doing in that film. Like it makes sense. Like we're talking a life and death situation here. The biggest, most destructive conflict, literally in our existence, is going on, and we need to build a super weapon to win it, basically. To ensure that we win the thing. I mean, the gravity of what's going on, I think she did a great job, and not to mention just all the actors they pulled out of the woodwork for that film. I wanted to say another thing based on something you just said. I feel all of Christopher Nolan's movies need at least 2 or 3 watches to really fully unpack them, right? I even going back to his Dark Knight trilogy, I felt that way about all 3 of those. Obviously movies like Inception, I love that movie, but also it's a movie that you got to watch like 3 times to really unpack it. And Oppenheimer, I have no doubt, is like the same way. So
yeah. So that was my number 1 movie.
All right, so I'm sure everybody is sitting here wondering, Kellan, if Across the Spider-Verse is not your number 1 movie of the year, there's a movie that just aged way better in my head, and I found myself coming back to. It's a movie I saw 3 times this year, twice in theaters, and I've since revisited scenes from it then, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That's my favorite. That was my favorite movie of this year. And I want to go back to at least another thing that I didn't actually talk about on this show. I won't go too into it, but the first Guardians movie is actually the movie that actually turned my mom into a Marvel fan. So there's always been a little bit of that kinship between her and I when it comes to that crew. But when that song hits, The Dog Days Are Over, at the very end of that film, and everyone's dancing, and literally I cannot watch that scene without getting emotional because it feels like the gang has collectively squashed their beefs, dealt with their demons and everything. And I don't know, just in a year where I felt like I did a lot of the same thing in my own life and just a lot of transition, things like that. It was just, that movie hit me in such a way and has continued to and stayed on my heart in a way that no other movie this year quite did. And that's why I got to give it to the Guardians, and to know that like all those characters were out there and they're still out there doing their thing by the end of the film. The Guardians still exists, just in a different form, out there. And eventually we're going to see Star-Lord again. We know he's on Earth, right? So that was, it was mainly for those reasons that just friends coming together to save one of their own, and you learn his tragic backstory and Rocket Raccoon, and just, it was so well done by everyone involved, and was the perfect send-off for James Gunn. And also, without talking everyone's ear off about it, kind of the best movie in like this era of the phase. It's probably the best movie since Endgame. I mean, I think I it's maybe not your favorite or best project, but in terms of the really strong projects up there, if you think Spider-Man No Way Home, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and then all of Loki, I mean, those are probably your strongest projects in the MCU since Endgame, right? So
yeah,
I mean, subjective, of course, but that's what I got. So I'm going to read my top 5 again. 5, Mission Impossible. 4, Oppenheimer. 3, Air. 2, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Read off your 5.
5, Barbie. 4, Mission Impossible. 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. 3, 2, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and 1, Oppenheimer.
And what was your process when you did this? Like, did you know your
So
number one immediately? Because for me, I had to really think about this.
I knew it was going to be Oppenheimer. I was not. It was not really that. Yeah. I knew it was going to be Oppenheimer.
Sounds like you knew your number one immediately.
Yeah,
I kind of did too. I was like, it's going to be shocking to people, but Guardians is my number one.
So here's the thing. I mean, not to I guess completely like rain on your parade of number one.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote my list originally with Air at number 3, and then I was like, wait, I don't have Guardians of the Galaxy on this list. Here. And that's so fine. Then I was like, I was just like, I just don't know what to do with Air then. I was just like, I don't. And so Air is like 5B. Let's call Air 5B. Like
Air's your honorable mention. Like,
yeah.
5B. Yeah, I could accept that. No, that's cool. For me, I knew Guardians was going to be my number one because the more I thought about it, I was like, I enjoyed Guardians more than I enjoyed Spider-Verse. It's really that simple. Now, when it came to Oppenheimer wasn't my 3, but when I was going back through the movies, both that we reviewed and a couple that I saw that we didn't review on this list, I was like, I was like, which biopic at the end of the day, if I could sit here and watch again and again, would I want to watch again? And it just came down to Air for me, especially with just my life and what I do for work and things like that. And that's the only reason why it got the nod for me over Oppenheimer, which was definitely going to be on my list. Don't get me wrong. It was going to 100% be here. What 5 would have been just completely disrespectful. And there's probably a lot of people who are like, well, 4 is a disrespectful, Kellan. I'm like, well, hey, look, this is my list. Your list is yours. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And yeah, that was where I had to stick Oppenheimer, and that's what caused Air to go over top. I was like, that's what it is. And 2 and 1 were obvious. So yeah, great stuff, y'all. I want to propose this question to our audience as well. Let us know your favorite movies of the year. You don't have to rank them, just what movies really, grabbed you this year. Obviously there were ones on here that I initially was looking around, Casen, and Air was the one that I had to remember because I was like, number 5. I'm like, am I really going to put Ant-Man at number 5? It wasn't really one of my favorite of the year. Especially with the circumstances of how we were beginning the show too. I was like, I don't know if that's, but then I remembered Air. I was like, oh, that's it then. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'll just say is that it was great to finally have like a huge summer of blockbusters again.
Yeah.
We definitely lost that the last couple of years. And so this felt like the first time it was finally back with just a ton of summer blockbusters. So
needs to be said too.
It was really cool.
A lot of this year for our show, our first year doing this, Casen, has been taught. We had a lot of talk about strikes on the show, and ultimately all of those are over now, right? No. Yeah, no, they're all over now. They are. That's right, because we talked about the SAG one ending. So, and they've been over now for a while, which is why we're starting to see this. We're starting to see a lot of the shows that were going to be in fall, like they're all like premiering in January. I don't know if you've seen a lot of the, like during Thanksgiving, I really noticed it. Like all this stuff, it's like January seems like a weird time to premiere, but it's like that's because it would have dropped in this fall if there was no strikes. My point in even bringing that up though is pay your people, because look at the amazing content these people make for us, from the top all the way down, from behind the camera to the writers, of which you and I basically both are, Casen, at a very at a level. So just thank you all for persisting, and thankfully the strikes ended. Everybody got stuff now. Everybody get back to work, and we'll get more summer blockbusters next year.
Absolutely.
We're about to go into a pretty dry area in terms of movies, so just January, February. But we'll see.
Yeah. It seems like definitely we're going to have a little bit of a lag here with some stuff that didn't that was caused by the strike, but we'll be back. We'll come back to our anticipated projects in January. So.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. We do got to do our. That's right. We got to do an anticipated movies of 2024. So it's gonna be cool. Now I got to start researching, man. It's gonna be it. Is it time for of the weeks? Because I have some.
Yeah, I think so.
Why don't you start us off of the weeks, if you have one on the tip of your tongue? Because
I have an Italian of the week.
Yeah. Yes.
And that goes to Tommy DeVito's sports agent, Sean Stellato.
What a guy.
I mean, if you happen to see it, there's a huge story because everybody's been talking about Tommy DeVito, the backup from the Giants, who managed to end up playing his way into being, okay.
In the conversation of starter now.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you compare him to Daniel Jones, yeah. And so then before the primetime game, it was Thursday, right? I think it was Thursday. They showed him.
We didn't have a show last week. It was actually one of the two Monday night games. Packers.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It was the Monday
last week. Yep. I just checking it. Yep.
And so so they showed him like talking to Tommy on the field before the game, and he was like on the phone, and he had this ridiculous suit and stuff. It was crazy.
He dresses incredibly. Apparently his grandmother taught him how to dress. And the whole world met Sean Stiletto. Like, not only is DeVito here and every Italian American is just loving this guy, but his agent looked exactly like you would like pluck it from a cartoon of how an agent of his would look. And he's apparently pretty good too. So yeah, did you see him in the green suit for the Saints?
Yeah. So apparently then this apparently has been in the works for a while. He ended up getting inducted to the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame.
That's right.
And so the green suit that he was wearing is essentially like their Hall of Fame jacket.
Really?
It's like green. Yeah, I believe incredible. I believe that's what it is. Is that like when you get into that, you get like a green suit.
Wow, that is true. That's crazy cool. It's basically their version of the green jacket at Augusta.
Yeah. So So this dude, I guess, played football at I think it was like Marist. It was Marist, maybe. It was some super small school. But he played football. He ended up becoming a sports agent.
Marist College. Yep.
And I believe also in a hilarious twist of fate, he played football against Todd McShay.
Oh yeah, I saw that too. Yeah,
that because they're both from the same area, the same kind of area in Massachusetts, and so the Todd McShay hates this guy because I think this guy beat him in football.
It's funny. Fun fact: he wrote 2 books: Fourth and Long, the Odds, My Journey, and No Backing Down. I may or may not might check those out at some point. But yeah, shout out Sean Stiletto. It's very cool that in like the last couple of weeks, the entire world has learned who you are. Keep rocking those hats, man. You're making everybody proud, and you making DeVito look good too. So
I will just say I'm not sure on this, but I thought I heard that Tommy DeVito hired like a different agent that might be saying that he wants somebody else. I don't know, but we'll see.
We'll see. But anyway,
I don't know if maybe it's a different, like a marketing agent, but
I had a upset / destruction of the week, and it's a little late now, but it was one of those games where like just the ramifications of it, but it was one of those situations where a team just how's the phrase go? This team strapped this team to the back of the pickup truck, dragging them along, and went down 90, going 90. And that was the Raiders to the Chargers last week. A week ago on Thursday, winning 63-21. I mean, it was rough to watch. I mean, it was a Death Star destruction like I haven't watched, which caused the firing, of course, of Chargers head coach. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, which we weren't able to really talk about that, but yeah, Brandon Staley was fired by the Chargers following that game, which like it was kind of hilarious because people were like, I wouldn't say hilarious, but people were sort of saying that he was on the hot seat for a while because it's like, dude, you've got Herbert, you've got all this talent, and like they're mediocre, and the defense, which he's supposed to be the defensive guy, is bad, and so everybody assumed it was going to happen at the end of the season, and then this game happens, and we're like, you've got to just leave him at the stadium. Like,
had we had a show last week, one of my sound bites of the week to go along with this definitely would have been, there was a soundbite of his, like in his presser, like a day or two or like a week or two before, where he was directly asked point blank in the presser, so coach, how do you know you haven't lost a locker room? And his immediate answer was, because we haven't gotten blown out, like our guys haven't quit, like all that stuff. Like that's how you know the guys are still trying, they want to get better and all this stuff. And then that game happened and he got fired immediately. It was like, well, there it goes. It's like, there it is.
Yeah, it definitely felt like this entire season was just brutal. Terrible sound bites from Brandon Staley, like not accepting blame, not admitting, because like he was asked several times about like, hey, like, are you gonna change play calling? Are you gonna make any of these changes? And he goes, no. Like he's like, I'm the best person for the job, so I'm gonna continue calling the defense. Like, you're just like, what? Like they were like they won 5 games and he was like, no, I'm the best man for the job. I'm not going to change anything. I still know what I'm doing. It's like, okay.
What's the definition of insanity? Doing the exact same.
So I think
expecting a different
that result. Like this is finally time to circle back and say, just like, how did we get here?
Yeah,
like,
we get here.
This guy was like a Division III coach, and then he somehow lucked his way into being the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Of which it's like, was that hard? Like to be the defensive coordinator for Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald? Like, what was that hard?
I just think that there comes a time when you look at a guy's body of work when the team's losing, and it's like, yeah, they haven't really won anywhere, have they?
Well, the dude went from like being a Division III coach to being an NFL head coach in like 5 years.
In like 5 years, that's an unbelievable.
It's just like, dude, like, what do you like? So clearly, he just did not belong there, and which explains why the bigger news to me is that the Chargers also fired their longtime GM Tom Telesco.
Yeah,
which
sort of, that's also the definition of what you were talking about, Casen, in terms of like the whole Texas A&M situation of like, this was so bad that you deserve to be fired because you hired this guy.
Which I mean, it's just kind of, well, it's sort of the thing where it's like, this is the culture thing with the Chargers, where the Chargers have a reputation, and it's for being consistently around 500 and like always just like choking games away.
Yeah,
and with a way over talented roster. Like you think back to the teams like what was it, the 2010 Chargers or whatever, where they were first in the league in offensive defense and last in special teams, and they missed the playoffs.
Yeah,
that was like 9 or 10, I think. And so it's just like you think of like all these things with the Chargers, and so that comes back to, well, who's in charge of the team? And so somebody like a Tom Telesco, where I mean, credit to him, because he's always getting recognized for being one of the better GMs, at least like professionally anyway. And he's an Ohio guy. I think he's from John Carroll. I think he's from John Carroll.
Okay.
And so there was a big conversation about that when they were anyway. So he's been there, I think, for 10 years. And so it's a huge deal for them to have to like completely reboot the organization.
I didn't realize he had been there that long. That is very significant.
So he and that's kind of the thing, is that like he hired and fired 3 coaches.
The Raiders are
just kind of like, dude, like
the Raiders obliterated them so hard that they destroyed the entire front office.
They got obliterated by the Raiders with a backup quarterback and an interim head coach.
Good job.
Like,
good job, Raiders.
Aiden O'Connell, like, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Which also just a really fun stat to me. The Chargers ended up sort of scoring some garbage time touchdowns to like make the score look less like the Georgia TCU national championship game, even though it was pretty much like that. And so by the end of the game, Easton Stick ended up having more passing yards than Aiden O'Connell.
Wow.
Which is barely.
To me.
Only because Jacoby Myers had a 12-yard pass that stole 12 yards from Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah,
but
the Raiders also got like a couple of defensive touchdowns, I think, too.
Yeah,
including that one where he just grabbed it on the fly, and that was incredible.
Yeah, because he's to stick through some picks, but
and anywho, I wanted to back up here and say the Chargers have the Bills next. Good luck. At home, and then the Broncos, then the Chiefs to end the year. So out of their misery, they just look, let's get this season over with.
here's the thing. I'm not to put him on blast specifically, but again, friend of the show, Matt, told me that the morning after he was fired, he was like, I think the Chargers are like the best opening available. I'm like, are you sure? I mean, they have Herbert, but the rest of that roster is a million years old. Like Derwin James, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, they're all going to be retired within 2 years. Like that entire roster is ancient. So it's like, I mean, you have Herbert, but like, who else do you have? Like, not to mention the fact that like they've been kind of drafting not well. Like they spent a first round pick on Quentin, the receiver from TCU, who can't catch anything to save his life.
Well, I don't know. I don't think necessarily anytime these openings come out and they try to like, compare them and all that stuff, it's like, look, no opening is particularly great. There's a reason there's an opening, right? I can see people saying it's the best one, but I also can just say like, I mean, what are we comparing it to? Carolina? Like,
yeah, I mean, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, which is like toxic by everyone's account. So I don't know. But anyway, wanted to talk about that for like the last week. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to do that. I think it's a better opening than you just made it sound, but mainly because if you have a good quarterback to build on, that's like half the battle. Because
it could be, it could be. But as far as the GM opening goes, that's a uphill battle because you've got contracts, you've got like aging veterans, you've got like, and I mean, not a lot of capital. So I don't know. I mean, just from my perspective, fire sale as soon as you get in there, reload some picks, get some money off the books. Like, yeah, I mean, you got to move Bosa probably. I'd move Derwin James. I'd move Khalil Mack. I'd move. I mean, yeah, move everybody basically because you've got to completely rebuild your core.
Yeah, for sure. So, I wanted to pivot here to talk about a pair of Pittsburgh sports. One, gonna get this out of the way. Steelers have never looked worse. They're to the point now. I haven't been able to watch them for the last couple of weeks just because of stuff in my own life. But Steelers, I really think, are falling apart. This is the first year where I really think that Steelers, Mike Tomlin, could have a losing schedule. We'll see. There's 3 games left, but they've lost 3 horrid games in a row. And I don't know. If I'm not on the fire Tomlin train, I am on the seat better be hot after this year, just because it just feels like every single decision the front office and the coaching staff has made this year has just been the wrong one. I mean, they've lost to the Cardinals, Patriots, and Colts in a row. You got the Bengals next at home. It's kind of like whatever. But then you got the Seahawks and Ravens. I don't know how the end of this 3 seasons goes. Tomlin's not going to get fired. They could go winless the rest of the way. I don't think that's going to happen. But there's some serious questions in Pittsburgh, and that's really just kind of my long and short.
My only question to you would be like I don't know. I mean, maybe not firing, but I mean, would you like? I mean, if you're the GM or the Roonies, like, are you approaching him to maybe discuss sort of a mutual parting of just like he doesn't seem like he's having a ton of fun there because the guys just aren't like you think about Pickens, like it's just like clearly the guys just aren't listening to what he has to say. Like, and it's not so much really a him thing. It's the roster is not tailored to his coaching style.
I think, how do I put this? I think that that we are seeing the closest thing maybe we've ever seen to Tomlin having lost a locker room. They acted way too long with Matt Canada. They haven't done enough innovation. Like, and I remember, I think even saying at the time, they got rid of Matt Canada and we had like an off week or something, but that's not going to fix the offense. The offense, they still can't score any points and they're banged up. They don't have there's arguably not a good quarterback on the roster because I think everyone's now out on Pickett. And so I don't know.
I think you're starting Rudolph this week, right?
Yeah. Mason Rudolph's a starter because Mitch was so bad and we don't have anyone else. So
yeah.
That's just how it goes. And as soon as the quarterback went down, I was like, that's probably the season. And that is basically what's happened. But regardless, it's like they collectively are just not managing that roster they have well. And I don't know what the immediate fix is, but the one thing the Steelers are known for is stability. That's why I don't think that they're going to fire him. I think they're going to try to let him make those adjustments first and foremost. New GM. We're going to see how aggressive the Steelers are, but I just see them kind of middling out the rest of the year, whether they make the playoffs or not. And we just go into the offseason tail between our legs and try to figure it all out.
Well, I more so think that, like, what about a trade? Like, I mean, to me, trade Tomlin to the Commanders. I mean, it seems to me like maybe he wouldn't say no.
What would you trade him for? I mean, no, coaching. Well, I mean, not happening.
Typically, those not for much, but I don't. I'm just saying that, like not to fire him, but it's just kind of like, I think he's definitely not super happy right now. I don't think I don't think anybody's super happy right now.
No.
So it's just like, I don't know what you do. Like, you can't fire him, but like, you're gonna need to gut the entire coaching staff beyond him.
Right. So that's that. My signing of the week happened literally today. Happened this morning. Andrew McCutchen is back with the Pittsburgh Pirates for 2024, signing a 1-year deal.
Amazing.
It's actually why I wore this hat today. Shout out over my left shoulder here. He's as I predicted, he's probably just going to do 1 year now until he retires. He's still very much in the mindset of, if there's a nucleus here, I want to see if I can, help it win. He was great last year. He's still going. Shout out Andrew McCutchen, as I recalled earlier on the show this year, my number 3 favorite professional athlete of all time. So, yeah, great stuff from Kutch. And I have one more of the week, and it has nothing to do with sports. It's just kind of a story I wanted to throw out there because I didn't get a chance to throw it out last week. Scam of the week goes to the now defunct Fantastic Studios for their disastrous launch. We're talking about video gaming real quick now. The day before video game. This was more of a story last week, so I'll just kind of briefly say there was this really hyped game on Steam. It was essentially going to be a survival horror zombie MMO. And this kind of got news traction because of how disastrous it was, but it came out, it was completely unplayable. It was all these things that got 0s and 1 out of 10 reviews. And
it got delayed a bunch, didn't it? So it was
delayed
supposed to come out and they got delayed.
Yes. And it really, releasing a video game this time of year is also kind of weird because you want to, it's an MMO, so it's online, but regardless, it comes out in a completely broken and unplayable state. And then 4 days later, the company shuts down. The developers shut down, saying that financially they can't continue, and prompting everyone to say, was this whole thing a scam? And they're going through assets. They pulled a bunch of assets from other games and stuff like that. My answer to that question is, I think it is somewhat in between. I think they kind of knew what they were doing with this and try to do a little bit of a pump and dump thing here, because they had made other games. They've existed since, I want to say, 2014 or 15, but this was hyped to be their biggest one. And then with this launch, I think the writing was on the wall more than they wanted to show, because you don't shut down 4 days later after launch if it's not going to be a possibility. So anyway, be careful out there, folks. But I'm just glad at least that I think it's off Steam now. I feel bad for the people who bought it, but unfortunately, it's kind of a worrying trend in the video game industry if you're in any way, shape, or form following that. So.
Yeah. I definitely, it seems like people that don't really know what they're doing are trying to make these way too ambitious games. And yeah. I mean, people are just, getting scammed, I guess, by being sold a bill of goods that they can't provide.
And the other thing I've learned about through this whole thing is there's this asset sharing thing going on right now between developers, which makes sense. It's like where developers share stuff with each other so they don't have to make it from the ground up, which makes sense. I mean, a lot of content-based businesses do similar kind of things like that. But yeah, it seemed like this whole game was nothing but that. They made nothing of their own. So anyway, that was the last of the week I had, Casen.
All right. I had
go ahead.
I'll just throw up a matchup of the week, and that which which it doubles for matchup of the week, and oh, I'm old of the week. And that goes to last night's game. It was like, yeah, last night's game against UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio, and Marshall. And the quarterbacks in that
was watching that for a while.
Were Owen McCown and Cole Pennington, sons of Josh McCown and Chad Pennington.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so you're like, oh,
wow,
yeah, I'm old.
I assume Pennington was the Marshall quarterback.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I didn't realize that. Like, yeah, it's funny is I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm sitting here pushing 30 years old, and that there are times when it's like you hear things like that, and it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. You know, they'd be a college age now.
I mean, it was a bowl game. It sounds like neither one of them really expected to start. Let me double check on that. Yeah, they're both freshmen, and so they both didn't really play a ton this year. And so I think it was Owen didn't even know he was starting until like last night.
Right. Well, so, one of the things,
but they both threw for 250. Owen had some picks, but they both threw for 250, which cool. I mean, good for them.
Yeah. One of the things I was just going to say that I think we're going to start to see starting as soon as next year is the bowl games are really going to cease to mean much. They'll always mean they will always mean stuff if you want to see your team play one more time in the year and win that. But between the transfer portal, and a lot of guys potentially leaving your roster before the bowl game, and just the hype that's going to be surrounding the 12-team playoff, that's what's going to make me feel old. It's like back in my day, the bowl games meant something.
Yeah.
But and then they've also never quite meant stuff.
It's kind of been that way. Oh, good. Sorry, it's been that way for probably the last 10 years. I mean, where it's just like if not, more than that, where it's just like if you're not playing in, a New Year's Six, it's just like, what is the point? And so I think what you're going to end up saying a lot of is that if it's not like a program like Bowling Green, where like you need a bowl win to like secure, some sort of relevancy or to win another game to look good, then it's really going to be essentially like a spring practice type of scrimmage situation where you can get a look at an underclassman quarterback that's going to be starting next year.
Yeah.
And you can try and evaluate because essentially I think from like a coaching perspective, you can have a game where you essentially play who you think your starter next year is going to be. And if that's not, I mean, if they ain't it, hit the portal, get somebody new.
Yeah.
Like it's like a showcase. It's like, this is what we think we have next year. And so if something's not working out, then we can make a shopping list and go hit the portal and find out what we need to get.
It's true. It's very true. And I in that regard, I don't think that's going away. So we'll see. I wanted to shift here. The last thing I have on our list is anything, from the last week in the NFL that you want to talk about. Which is why I put of the weeks in the middle, because I figured we'll start to begin that conversation then.
I just real quick before we go, I just comment though that today is signing day.
It is
for football. So we've been getting a lot of commitments, a lot of stuff. I'll just comment quickly on sort of the ridiculousness of this. So are you familiar with I guess at this point a high school senior by the name of Dylan Raiola?
No. So, actually, back up. That last name sounds familiar.
I'm sure it does. So it is a football family. He's of Nebraska fame. I think his uncle is on the staff there. I think his dad might have played there. I could be wrong. Dad or uncle or somebody. Either way, the Raiolas are like Nebraska royalty in Lincoln.
Makes sense.
And so in high school, everybody assumed he was going to Nebraska. And then he ended up being too good for Nebraska like 2 years ago. And so he ended up committing to Ohio State. And then a year ago, he decommitted from Ohio State and committed to Georgia.
Oh, he's this guy. Yep, I have heard this.
And then he ended up moving, and he went to his senior year of high school in Buford, Georgia. So he played high school football in Georgia.
Yeah,
this year. And then like 2 weeks ago, he decommitted from Georgia, and he's going to Nebraska.
Yeah, I saw that. Quite the world.
And so
these have all just been commitments, though. So
it's just like this kind of stuff is just ridiculous to me. Like, it's like, dude, well, like, what are you doing?
It's a sign of the times, right? It's one thing to commit, but it's going to be awkward when he transfers 3 times in college. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing.
It's like getting into that mindset already. It's like, okay, that might not work out here. Let's go somewhere else. Okay, it may not work out here. And it's starting with commitments. We're not even to the actual transfer yet. He's not even at school yet. You know, we're talking about commitments here. I don't know. It just that a sign of the times, right?
Well, it was just very funny to me because it was like, to me, this is essentially what I can imagine what happened. So I'm sure his lifelong dream was to play at Nebraska, but Nebraska sucked, and so he wanted to go somewhere where he could be relevant and get paid. So he went to Ohio State, like, duh. And then they brought in, or they got a different quarterback. They got that Air Nolan kid coming in. So he was like, oh, I don't want to have to compete for the job, so I'm just going to go to Georgia. And so Georgia offered him a bag. And he moved. I think the moving to Georgia part is what confused me, because he moved to Georgia to like get a leg up on playing, I think, with some of his teammates that are going to be there at UGA.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Matt Rule goes to Nebraska, and then they end up getting a bag for NIL. And so they pay him, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll just go to the place I want to do all along.
Yeah, I'll go back. I mean, you know, the greenest pastures were at home, right? So weird. I mean, these guys are shopping their futures around, and it's just one big thing I will say about National Signing Day and the early signing period now is it's going to become less of a big deal as time goes on, because half these guys over half of them are going to transfer next year anyway. That's just, I was thinking that coming into this year. I thought to myself that the early signing period has never meant less than it does now, because the transfer portal's almost more important.
Yeah, like, it's almost like, where do I want to spend my freshman year of college?
Exactly.
Then I'll just go. Yeah.
So some of these guys will stay all 4 years. Some of them will. Some of them will be long players, but a lot of them are not. So
yeah. And the Raiola story, I'll just add, is kind of funny, because apparently right before Raiola committed to Nebraska, a story came out that his uncle got like a huge raise on the coaching staff.
Yeah, so there you go. Like,
and so people are like, wait, did his uncle like funnel him money to go there?
Who knows? I mean, you know, but all of this is connected, right? Everything's always connected. So
I don't know. Yeah.
Shifting gears to the NFL just to close it out. Wanted to just talk about this. The Bills have won 2 impressive games in a row after their situation where they were sitting there at 6-6. They're 8-6. They demolished the Cowboys this past weekend. I also wanted to acknowledge the Lions destroyed the Broncos as well. Really trying to solidify those NFC spots. But I more wanted to ask Casen, weren't you at a Browns game? No, you talked about it last time. What are your thoughts about the Browns game this past weekend? The non-Hail Mary.
Well, I don't believe I talked about it, because I was at the Jags game.
You at the 2 weeks Sunday. Ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I these kind of go hand in hand. So well, I'll just recap the Joe Flacco experience so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to talk about that, because that's been
absolutely wild. I mean, Joe Flacco is a dude that we're both very familiar with.
Yeah.
From him being at the Ravens for so long. And I remember being very angry at Joe Flacco last year when he ended up coming back from down 14 points in like a minute and a half to beat us with the Jets in like our first home game of the year last year. And
look at him now.
But look at him now. All is forgiven. all is forgiven. He's the franchise quarterback, face of the franchise.
You know what? I'll go this far. Absolute dog of the week, Joe Flacco. I'm serious. You never know where life's going to take you, but like the journeyman, he's reminding me a little bit of like Vic at the very end there. Like, people forget that Vic played for the Steelers for a bit. He won a couple games with the Steelers when Ben went down and other stuff. Like, these journeyman guys who just want to keep playing. Like, they're just at the very end of the line and they just want to keep playing football. And yeah, look at this. I mean, I'm looking here. He passed for 374 yards against the Bears. I mean, my goodness, the guy might be a playoff quarterback. Casen.
Yeah, he would have 300 yards in 3 consecutive games, but he had like 290 against the Rams. Like, he just barely missed 300 against the Rams.
Think about this year, dude, and just the quarterbacks who have gone down. We're talking about Joe Flacco potentially leading this pretty solid Browns team into a playoff run.
I just want you. So just think about this. Opening day of the 2014 Cleveland Browns, and you tell them, hey, in 2023, Joe Flacco is going to lead you to the playoffs,
to the promised land.
It's just a very interesting story. And I mean, I think what's very frustrating to me is that, like, this is not hard. Like it shouldn't be this hard to get an adult in the quarterback room. Like you listen to him talk and you watch him play, and he's honestly like the perfect fit for Kevin Stefanski, because I mean, I made there've been a ton of jokes about it. Like, they look kind of similar. They're from similar areas, and he's a lot like him, where they're both like just very calm and measured all the time, and they don't really panic. They don't really overly celebrate. They're just very measured, like, until the job's done. And so he's like the first adult I can ever remember playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Like, it's kind of absurd. Like,
well, adult like, I mean, they're constantly drafting new guys, so it's always been a young guy. So it's,
I mean, but even more like, adult with a level of talent that actually can win you games. Because like, Josh McCown is fine. I mean, he's an adult, but it's just like Josh McCown is Josh McCown. Like, I mean, you think of Brian Hoyer. I mean, Brian Hoyer, I'm sure, is, a perfectly mature adult, but Brian Hoyer is Brian Hoyer. I mean, Joe Flacco, for some reason, having a cannon at like 37 years old is ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's a great story, right? And it's the perfect, adage of the NFL season is long. All the sports seasons are long, and you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, in a situation where over half the league starters are out, basically, it's like I said a couple weeks ago, it's going to come down mainly to who's the last guy standing, which is why I think.
Well, I don't know if he never got called. I think the big question right now is just like, why was he not in New York? Like, like, he was literally on the Jets last year.
Well, given he just didn't. Saleh didn't want him. I don't know.
Because it definitely is a thing where it's like, why didn't you call this guy? And now he's balling out for a different team.
It makes you wonder. Yeah, especially second Rodgers went down. How did you not get Joe Flacco in here? It's just boneheaded.
I don't know if maybe they didn't. He said no. I don't know. I'm not sure on what happened. But because it definitely sounded like, from what people were saying, was because there was a whole controversy in Cleveland about after the Jags game, which was an awesome game, by the way. The seats that I had were like under the one end zone overhang. And so thankfully it wasn't like raining like it was on Sunday, but it kind of kept us from the wind a little bit. So it was a cool place. But that was a great environment. The first Njoku touchdown on the first drive was like coming right at us, and so it was super cool to see that. But anyway, so right after that game, like from the way that the rosters work, he automatically reverted to the practice squad, and so people are like, "Why is he on the practice squad?" Because like now he can just leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he can get like stolen by somebody else, and what people weren't really saying was that like, he had to also agree to go to another team. Like, it's not like they could just take him.
Right.
He had to agree to go with them. And from what it sounded like, other teams did call him. And I don't know. I don't think he said who, but he got a couple calls last week before he signed the deal.
So it sounds like he chose Cleveland.
He no, he did.
That's cool.
Well, because it's like, I mean, like, who else are you going to go to that's like in a playoff position like that?
Well, exactly.
Like who? Like, what other team would you do? Like, he wouldn't go to play. I mean, the Steelers. Like, I don't know. I mean, he was also there, and I think he likes the roster. And so it's just like there wasn't a point, I don't think, in leaving at that point. But
right. I want to move on from this. I just want to get to one other game I wanted to acknowledge just because of the area I live in. There were literally 45-cent tickets for this game prior to it starting, and that was the Falcons at Panthers this past weekend in a blistering rainstorm. I mean, the weather was horrendous here, and I got to say, the attendance looked like there was just no one in attendance for that game at kickoff. Yeah. Regardless, though, all of 15 people in attendance did see the Panthers win their second game of the year, 9-7 over the Falcons off 3 field goals, not even scoring touchdowns out here. Like Falcons got 1.
Yeah.
Regardless, though, Panthers kicked 2 field goals in the fourth quarter to win. Just wanted to give a shout out to them.
I mean, I think there's a theory out there that David Tepper bought like a ton of tickets to drive up the price so that they weren't 45 cents anymore.
I can believe that.
But there were still like 100 people there.
Also, the other, for the most part, the rest of these were interesting. 49ers still look like the best team in the NFL. That's my Super Bowl favorite right now. I think you would agree with that. One thing, though, is interesting here. The Eagles are stumbling a little bit and lost to the Seahawks on Monday night.
Yeah, my Seahawks.
Yours. Yeah, one of the stupider gags on this show over the course of this last of this NFL season. Now the Browns are good with Joe Flacco. This is stupid, but okay, yeah, continue.
It was an emotional bit. Okay,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles definitely are sort of like the wheels are falling off, and I mean,
the wings are coming off, so to speak.
Not to mention the fact that it would like weirdly broke. I think it was Sunday that they were basically like demoting Sean Desai from defensive coordinator and replacing him with Matt Patricia.
I did see
that. They were like, he's not going to be defensive. Like, we're not firing him or demoting him. He's just not calling the plays anymore. It's like, so he's not the defensive coordinator anymore. But I mean, it's almost like, and I'm serious, it's almost like that win against the Bills has taken like the life out of them, because they have gotten demolished at home by the 49ers, demolished on the road. A series we thought they would split, they got destroyed in both games. And now you've lost to the Seahawks, and you have Giants, Cardinals, Giants to close it out. My God, you better win all 3 of those. Well,
you better. You better.
Yeah.
If you want to hang on to your spot in the NFC, yeah.
To me, this feels like. Do you remember? It was it was a couple years ago when the Packers went 13-3, and everybody was like, they're not going to do anything in the playoffs because they're the weakest 13-win team of all time. And they immediately got like annihilated by the 49ers or something.
So is that what you're saying this Eagles team could be?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I mean, if they have issues if they don't win all 3 of these games, but if they do, they'll be 13-4.
If they lose one of these games, I'm going to be sitting here saying, Eagles could go out of the playoffs pretty fast.
So here's the thing. They would be probably the 5 seed going to Tampa Bay, probably.
That sounds horrendous.
So that'll be
fun.
They'll probably win that game, but then they're going to be playing the 49ers.
In San Francisco. Yeah.
So it's like that's, and then it's going to be a revenge game for them because of the Purdy thing last year. And so, yes, my prediction for the Eagles is they'll end up going 13-4, beating the Bucs in Tampa Bay, and then getting absolutely blown out of the building in San Francisco.
Blown off the face of the earth.
Yes.
The doors blown off. Speaking of the doors, speaking of the wheels usually coming off and the doors getting blown off, the Bills blew the doors off of the Cowboys at home. I think Josh Allen is on a one-man wrecking crew show to shut you up, specifically, Casen. He's gonna try, but the defense is still gonna mess up in the playoffs.
I would like to thank Josh Allen for listening. He must be a listener.
Big time listener. Thanks, Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean credit to them for managing to get sort of the offense back on track after firing Ken Dorsey. It seems like they managed to kind of get things a little bit figured out following that sort of restructure.
I see a situation here where I think they'll go 3-1 to end the year, because I can see them losing to the Dolphins last game of the year. That makes their road in the playoffs tough, and maybe that's going to be good for their adversity kind of thing at the tail end of this. I will say though, if it wasn't for a correct call, mind you, they would have lost to the Chiefs. So, officiating call, that is.
Well, yes.
I could see it coming. I watched that whole game. I was like, the Bills are going to lose, and it's going to be hilarious. And they didn't lose, because again, the official correctly called a thing, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it last year. But you got that whole shouting match, Mahomes being all mad, and he's like, worst call I've ever seen.
We'll get to that. Yeah. The Dolphins have the Cowboys and the Ravens next. They could lose both those games.
True.
And then the Bills-Dolphins game at the end of the season would be for the division.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they definitely, everything is still right in front of them if they win all the games, which they should. At least the Chargers and Patriots, those are winnable games.
Well, listen, they were supposed to win all these games during the course of the year, and they've lost horrendously. So
that is true.
Horrendously and hilariously. The
bickering Bills. On the other side of it, though, it's the Cowboys. I think tremendous stuff. I mean, we go from MVP Dak last week after they beat the Eagles to this week. We got Skip throwing his Micah Parsons jersey in the trash can again.
Yeah. We've got Stephen A. Smith doing his laughter and how about them Cowboys, which is one of my probably my only favorite bit of Stephen A. that he still does. I love how he just trolls Cowboys fans. That is my favorite thing of anything that he does. So good.
He's making those videos for one person and one person only.
Yeah, it's Skip Bayless. Yeah, absolutely.
And that person makes his wife record him throwing a jersey into a trash can every year.
Very true. I mean, the Cowboys did win. I'm looking here, 5 straight games before getting destroyed at Buffalo. Now, I will say, I think it was like a lax thing here, but if the Cowboys start to fall apart here down the stretch, when the Cowboys lose, it's the funniest thing on earth, because their fans are just like, we know what's going to happen in the playoffs. They're going to lose, and it's going to be funny when they do.
I mean, you've got an outdoor game in Buffalo. Like, I figured they were probably going to lose the game anyway.
First, you've got Miami. So I don't know. You got Miami on Christmas Eve, and that's like going to be warm. So,
Well, they have back-to-back games against 10-win teams. So it's
true.
I mean, they've got the Dolphins and the Lions, which not going to be easy games.
Woof.
And then they've got the Commies to finish it up. So it's just like I don't know. I don't know. I mean, they could win. They can win all 3 of these games. They could go 1-2. I don't know. I mean, it's really going to be up in the air.
We're going a bit long here. So how about we wrap it up with this Mahomes situation a couple weeks ago? What more, if anything, would you want to talk about that? Because we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week.
Yeah. So I think that essentially what it is that, for one, I will give Mahomes and to Andy's credit, a little bit of, I guess, grace regarding it, because apparently Andy Reid has never been called for that ever. And so I would imagine for getting called for offensive offsides, like for the first time ever, is like a weird thing probably to experience. But then all of a sudden, like, everybody's getting called for weird for that, and being like, the league made a point, I believe, to tell everybody that they were cracking down on it before this, and this ended up making, like, I think there were a couple other calls in the last 2 weeks after that
got
to
weird.
basically to basically have the league be like, see, it's not just them, it's all these other people too.
My whole reaction that I would have said on here last week is that it's really weird when a team, first of all, there's no team that sounded more entitled than the Chiefs last week. That just, and it was so funny. You had that situation where Mahomes is like complaining to Josh Allen, who did not say a word. I'm like, yeah, Josh doesn't care. He won. I mean, if anyone, you're going to complain to the guy who's been on the receiving end of a lot of like terrible losses, including to you guys. Like, no way. Anyway, besides the point, I'm a little surprised that no one called out Kadarius Toney for being wrong, like for lining up and ruining that. Like, that's his fault. You know what I mean? That was really my big like takeaway. I understand where everybody's coming from, but it was Kadarius Toney's fault for getting penalized.
Well, here's the thing though, too, is
not to mention they had 2 more plays. They could have, I mean, they had, it's not like that ended the game. They still had a couple more plays.
That is also true.
Yeah. It's like, and then he's freaking out about that. It's like, hey, Mahomes, why don't you, convert the next 2 plays instead of complaining at the end of the game? I don't know.
Or I don't know, win the game before that.
Yeah. Or like, don't be in that situation in the first place. You guys win all the time. What's so hard about that? I mean,
yeah.
You were saying?
Yeah. So essentially, I think it was Orlovsky that said that, or he did like a recap video of the game, and Toney was offsides like 7 times during that game.
So I you know what, and side note to Orlovsky, I love when like these guys do actual film breakdown and like find stuff and put it on Twitter and all that stuff after the fact. Just showing it's like, hey, we're freaking out about this one play, but look at this one, just how film goes, But anyway, biggest takeaway for me in that game is just that could mean a lot in terms of the playoff race. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for that penalty, the Chiefs still beat the Bills. So given a second opportunity in the playoffs, I'm going to be picking the Chiefs. So that's essentially it. Any thoughts? So any final thoughts on that? Like, I still would take the Chiefs over the Bills is what I was getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know. I mean, I think the Chiefs, I said at the time, like when they got Toney, I was like, this is sort of going to be a time bomb, because he was bad in New York. He's bad in Kansas City. Like, I think now we're really starting to see, like, okay, like Mahomes is still good, but like half of their otherworldly plays were just, like prime Tyreek and prime Travis being able to make plays. And it's like, now that you've got like Kadarius Toney, it's just like it's not the same thing.
I will say that would have been the play of the year if that stood.
It would have been.
That pass from Kelsey over to him for the touchdown. If that play had stood, that would have been the play of the year. That was so good.
Yeah,
he came out of nowhere, like, oh, he's open. Bam.
he also was like talk because he think he did it like a couple weeks ago, like a month ago maybe.
Travis
or
does,
he tried to.
that's like a thing Travis Kelce does.
He is addicted to laterals. He is addicted to laterals.
Oh yeah,
and
he's
yeah,
openly
it's
said,
so funny.
He's openly said that like that's something he practices. Like, is the play over, or can I get it to a guy who's open some way somehow? And in that regard, I mean, he threw that thing like 30 yards across the field. I mean, probably like 30, 20 some. Really, it was more like 25, 30 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it ultimately doesn't count, but we still do have the highlight because it was awesome. So, but yeah, that's all I had to talk about the NFL. Any final thoughts of things you want to speak on or wrap up the year with?
I
Any burning takes?
I will just sit here and say I hope to come back in the new year talking about how the Browns have clinched a playoff spot. And how that's we have a playoff spot. We've extended Kevin Stefanski. We've given Joe Flacco a 10-year contract.
At like 38 or whatever he is. Yeah. We've done the unthinkable.
We finally found our franchise quarterback, and he's 38 years old.
My goodness, what a league, man! What a time to be alive. I want to just wrap it up by thanking everyone for this year. You know, who's out there that listens. Casen and I are going to take the week off next week, so happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Again, thank you so much for watching, Casen. I also wanted to say this: thank you, brother. The brief story about this is just that I approached Casen around now a year ago, saying that I was really wanting to do something. I was still job searching at the time, and I wanted to get kind of like a side project going. And we turned it into this thing. My dude who actually did have a podcast of his own, very, very briefly there. But I also wanted to point this out, Casen. I did the math. This is our 42nd show of the year if you count the show 0. Officially, it is 41. It is the 41st show. But if you want to go by the number of casts, technically, like our first one, we don't really count. It's an episode 0. We were just trying to see if we could even make this work. But and it was ironically about the playoffs. We were talking about that. But ultimately, this is our 42nd show. There are 52, give or take, weeks in a year, which means for almost 80% of the year, Casen, we had a show out per week. How incredible is that? All but like for 10 weeks, we had an episode of our cast out, including situations where we did emergency ones right in the center there, when your team wins the Stanley Cup, and other things like that, among other highlights of the year. But yeah, just I thought this worked really well, Casen, as kind of like a showcase of like some of our best moments of the year, and talking about movies and other stuff, and the topics we've come up with, the segments we've done of the weeks. We're going to keep doing that. The short 6-pack, which is one of my favorite things, which we got to do that again at some point. Where
we'll bring that back in the off season. Where
Casen blindsides me with ridiculous stories, and I have to react in real time, professionally, of course. But anyway, just wanted to do that, and you have the floor, man. Anything you might want to say, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, thank you, man. It's been a fun ride. So we'll see how next year goes.
Let's keep it going, man. Let's keep it going, and we hope all you are out there as well. Will come with us into the new year, 2024. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of good things and positive stuff to look forward to, and more guests. Thank you to everyone who's been on a guest this year as well. And we look forward to having you back again. We'll
have to make some fun plans for episode 50.
I was thinking about that too. There were milestone years. I was like, okay, our 50th episode, like that'll be a big deal. Other ones like your 100th episode, but I also thought, Casen, 119 is going to be a big deal for us too.
Oh yeah,
we got to think of something like stupid to do that one too.
Yeah,
the 119th episode of Junction 119. But yeah, we'll think about it, and that's why I think it worked for Nate to be on episode 40. That was great. It was also that dropped on my mom's birthday too, so that was fantastic. So, but we're rolling into it, man. Let's have a great holidays and New Year's, and come back at the next stops for next year. Does it sound good to you?
Absolutely, man. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for being with us the whole way.
And this is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we'll see you back in 2024 at the next stop.